Imagine the relief, the sheer joy of families finally reunited with loved ones after enduring unimaginable pain. But what if that joy is overshadowed by a lingering uncertainty, a fear that the nightmare isn't truly over? That's the complex reality unfolding as Israeli hostages are set to be released from Gaza. A moment of hope intertwined with the harsh realities of a conflict that has touched so many lives. According to the latest reports, 20 Israeli hostages believed to be alive in Gaza are expected to be freed in the coming hours. This pivotal development is part of the initial phase of a U.S.-brokered ceasefire agreement. In a reciprocal move, nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees held in Israeli facilities will also be released. This exchange marks a significant step, but it's only the beginning of a long and arduous journey toward healing and lasting peace. And speaking of peace, U.S. President Donald Trump has boldly declared the war is over. But here's where it gets controversial. Can a declaration truly erase the deep-seated wounds and complexities of this conflict? Many would argue that lasting peace requires more than just words. It demands sustained effort, dialogue, and a willingness to address the root causes of the strife. What do you think? Adding to the diplomatic efforts, President Trump is en route to Israel, where he's scheduled to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and address the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. He will also meet with families directly affected by the hostage crisis, offering support and solidarity during this emotional time. Following his visit to Israel, Trump will travel to Egypt to participate in a summit focused on Gaza's future. This summit will bring together leaders from over 20 countries, including prominent figures like French President Emmanuel Macron and UK's Keir Starmer, underscoring the international community's commitment to finding a sustainable solution for the region. One particularly heart-wrenching story highlights the personal toll of this conflict. Omri Miran was kidnapped from his family home in Kibbutz Nahal Oz by Hamas militants, leaving behind his wife, Lachey, and their 2 young daughters, Roni and Alma. CNN spoke with Miran's brother-in-law, Moshe Lavi, who shared the family's daily ritual of the daughters waiting for their father's return. This story is just one example of the countless families whose lives have been irrevocably altered by the hostage crisis. In Tel Aviv, crowds have gathered at Hostages Square, a place that has become a symbol of hope and resilience. For over 700 days, this plaza has been the focal point for demonstrations demanding the release of the hostages. People have been staying through the night in anticipation of the release, singing songs and watching screens that will broadcast the hostages' return. The atmosphere is charged with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum's health team has issued a stark warning. The released hostages and their families face a long and challenging road ahead. After enduring years of inhumane conditions, including starvation, lack of medical care, isolation, violence, and abuse, they require comprehensive medical care, close supervision, and most importantly, the restoration of their identities as human beings, not just hostages. The team emphasizes that the hostages' health must be the top priority in every decision made moving forward. The families group also notes that the return of deceased hostages for burial will provide a sense of closure, allowing families to mourn with dignity and begin the healing process. The Israeli government has outlined detailed plans for the hostage release process. Shosh Bedrosian, a spokesperson for Israel's Prime Minister's office, emphasized that there will be no Hamas propaganda or sick displays this time. A contrast to previous exchanges where Hamas staged macabre ceremonies before handing over the hostages. Instead, the 20 living hostages will be released directly to the Red Cross and transported in a convoy of vehicles. After their release, the hostages will be reunited with their families and then transported to 3 different hospitals for medical treatment. A ceremony will be held for the deceased hostages, and an international task force will assist in retrieving any bodies not returned during the initial 72-hour period. Simultaneously, Israel is preparing to release Palestinian prisoners and detainees. As part of the agreement, Israel must free 250 Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences, as well as 1,700 Palestinians from Gaza who were detained after October 7, 2023. Of those, 142 prisoners will be deported, while the rest will return to the West Bank or East Jerusalem. This aspect of the agreement is particularly sensitive and could spark debate, as opinions vary widely on the justification for the prisoners' detention and the potential impact of their release. And this is the part most people miss. The release of prisoners on both sides is crucial for maintaining the ceasefire and fostering trust. World leaders are converging in Egypt's Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh for a summit on Gaza's future. The gathering, co-chaired by President Trump and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, is expected to include a peace signing ceremony. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has confirmed his attendance, stating that the UK will play a leading role in the next phase of the peace plan, and announcing £20 million in aid for Gaza. Other prominent figures attending include UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto. Families of the hostages are en route to Re'im, the designated location for receiving the released hostages after they cross the border. The hostages are expected to be released in 3 batches, starting at 8 a.m. local time. However, CNN Global Affairs analyst Brett McGurk cautions that the hostages may be unaware of their impending release. He emphasizes the importance of tracking the vehicles transporting the hostages until they are safely within Israeli territory, highlighting the fragility of the situation. As the situation continues to unfold, several key points are worth noting. Trump's confidence. The U.S. president has expressed strong confidence in the ceasefire's durability, stating that the war is over. But is this optimism justified? What factors could potentially derail the peace process? Hostages Square. Preparations are underway in Tel Aviv's Hostages Square as anticipation builds. Live coverage of the releases will be shown, allowing the public to share in this momentous occasion. Palestinian prisoners. Once the hostages are safely back in Israel, nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees will be released into Gaza. Rising death toll in Gaza. Despite the ceasefire, the death toll in Gaza continues to rise. Over the past 3 days, Gaza hospitals have reported hundreds of deaths, many of whom were retrieved from under the rubble. Aid shipments. The UN has reported an increase in approved aid shipments to Gaza, totaling 190,000 metric tons. However, the UN hopes this is just the beginning in getting crucial supplies to the enclave. Aid trucks lined up. Dozens of humanitarian aid trucks are waiting on the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing, ready to enter Gaza once given the signal. Netanyahu's new era. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stated that the hostage release will mark the beginning of a new era for Israel, a path of healing, a path of rebuilding. In January, there were chaotic scenes during the protracted release of Israeli and Thai hostages in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu postponed the release of 110 Palestinian detainees by several hours after live images were broadcast of a crowd of thousands jostling and cheering as the hostages were handed over to the Red Cross. A total of 48 hostages are expected to be released as part of this week's ceasefire agreement. Of those captured on October 7, 2023, 20 are presumed alive and 25 are believed to be dead, with the status of 2 others uncertain. There is one additional hostage whose body was held in Gaza before the October 7 attacks. IDF soldier Hadar Golden was killed in 2014, and his body has been held captive since then. The majority of those still in Gaza are Israeli citizens. 4 are foreign nationals. 2 are from Thailand. 1 from Tanzania and 1 from Nepal. Of the remaining foreign nationals, 3 are confirmed deceased, while the status of the 4th, Nepali citizen Bipin Joshi, remains unknown. The Israeli government has expressed grave concerns for him. All the remaining hostages believed to be alive are male. One of the deceased hostages, Inbar Heyman, is female. Hamas and other militant groups kidnapped 251 people from Israel during the October 7, 2023 terror attacks. Since the start of the war, 148 hostages have been returned alive to Israel. 140 were released, and 8 were rescued by the Israeli military. Several bodies of deceased hostages were also returned by Hamas. The release of these hostages is undoubtedly a moment of profound significance, but the path to lasting peace remains fraught with challenges. What are your thoughts on the long-term prospects for peace in the region? Do you believe this ceasefire agreement can pave the way for a more sustainable resolution? Share your opinions and insights in the comments below.